Hey, welcome back. All right, in this tutorial, we're going to go ahead and start making that door I showed you in the last kind of preview tutorial. And we're going to make the first door, which is going to be one that is automatically opens when we go into a trigger box. So let's go ahead and jump in and let me show you what that looks like. All right, so here we are in our base scene, in our sandbox scene. And I'm going to move out of the cannons because I don't need them going off while we're setting up our doors. So over here in some empty space, I'm going to go ahead and create my first door. Now, if you don't already have this pack, the doors that I was using actually come in our starter content. If you don't have it, the way you can do it is if you go to your content drawer, hit the plus button, you can go to add feature or content pack up here at the top. Go to content and then click on starter content and click on add to project. I already have them in my project, so I'm going to go ahead and move forward. If I go into my starter content folder, into props, this is where the doors are located. So here is the standard door and the door frame. And if I pull those in together, they kind of line up, but not completely, because the door frame is actually set up to be centered. And you can see that here. And then the door itself is set up for the rotation for the gizmo to be on the far, I guess this would actually be the left corner, because this would be the X and the Y. So if I move it this direction, it'll put the Y, and then I can line it all up just like that. But that's a little bit pointless because we're actually going to do this in a blueprint. All right, so now we know where to get the doors, and we have them. We make sure we have them, and we know a little bit about the door. Let's go in and set up our first blueprint. So I'm going to go to content, into my blueprints. Then I'm going to go into interactables, because this is going to be an interactable. I'm going to right click. We're going to do a blueprint class. This is going to be another actor. So remember, this is something we can spawn in the world, and then the player can interact with this based off the blueprint. We're going to call this BP door, and I'm just going to call this regular. Okay. And then I'm going to double click on the blueprint, open it up, drag it up, do a save. So it's saved, we don't lose it. Now, the easiest thing to do is to just go ahead and go to our content drawer, go back into our, and actually, let's just do this. We'll go here. If I hit the little, because I have the door in the scene, if I hit the little search button here, I don't have to go find it again. I can grab both of these, go back to my blueprint, my regular door. I'm going to close these up here so they don't get in the way. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop these onto the scene route. And again, the door is, of course, not lined up, so we're going to go ahead and move it over. And it should be probably somewhere around 45 in the Y, just to kind of line it up perfectly, because this is, I believe, 90 wide. Okay, so now that we've got that set up, I'm going to go ahead and compile and save it. The first thing we need to do is we're also going to add in our volume that we're going to need to set our trigger, for our trigger volume, right? So up here, I'm going to hit the plus button, and I'm going to just type in box. I'm going to get the box collision. And as always, I like just letting it myself know that this is the trigger. So we're going to call this a box trigger. I'm going to change the scale of it, and actually that's going to be done over here in the box extent. We don't want to change it here. We want to change it over here. So I'm going to give it a little bit more width. And I'm going to make it wide enough so that the player can move around it without setting it off. So I'm going to make this 150. And then we're going to make it a little wider in the door, just a little bit, give us a little bit of room. Probably make this 75. And then, because we're using a ball, all we have to actually do is be in the trigger. But you can also, if you wanted to, make this a little taller. There we go. I'm going to drag that up so that it kind of lines up along the bottom of the door. And it can even be a little bit above the ground, because our player is obviously going to be taller than a few centimeters. Okay, so this is our box volume that we're going to use. I'm going to go ahead and compile. I'm going to save it. Now, for the box, we're going to go ahead and make sure it's selected. scroll all the way down here. And we're going to do an on component begin overlap. And then I'm going to go back to the box trigger. And, you know, it doesn't need to be attached to the door. In fact, we don't want it attached to the door at all. If yours ended up doing like mine did here, just click and drag it and drop it on the default scene root and say attach, because we do not want it attached to the door. You could have it attached to the door frame if you didn't have the scene root, and that would be okay, but we don't want it moving with the door. We want it staying put, because the door is going to rotate. We don't want the box to also rotate with it. I'm going to compile that. Now, the next thing after we select the trigger again is we're also going to do a on component end overlap. So when we end the overlap, we want something to happen as well. Now, I'm going to put a little space between these two. We want to make sure that the other object that is being overlapped is our player. So we're going to right click and we're going to get PlayerPawn. Okay. And once we have the PlayerPawn, we're going to make sure that the other actor, we're going to do an equal. Okay. And then with that selected, I'm just going to Control D down here, and we're going to go ahead and attach this in here like that. So we have two of these. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is get a branch, because we want to make sure that, again, the branch is how we're going to make sure that our player is or is not the other actor that's being overlapped with the door. And I did not want to do that. Just hover over the output here and Control D to duplicate that down here. Something like that. Okay, now we're going to need to create a couple of variables, because when we have our door, we're going to want to make sure that if we're going to close it, the door needs to be open. So we need to verify that the door is both open, and we also want to make sure that the door is not moving. We don't want the door to, I mean, it would be okay, I guess, but because we're also going to use sound and some other things, we want to make sure that the door is all the way open or all the way closed before it does the opposite, before it opens or closes again. So we want to make sure that it completes the motion before we interrupt it by leaving or entering into the box. And that'll do a couple of things again. So we'll talk through that as we get that far. But let's go ahead and make those variables right now. So I'm going to hit the plus button down here. And these are going to be Booleans. So we can just leave them as Booleans. And we're going to do is door open. And we're also going to do is door moving. Okay, so we're going to check to see if it's open, and we're going to check to see if it's moving. Okay, so we're going to drag this one out, is door open, and we're going to get it. And of course, we haven't set it yet. We'll set that in a minute once we get to the point where we're going to move the door one way or the other. And then we're also going to get is door moving, and we're going to put them right here, and we're going to get that as well. For this one, we want to check. Since we're going to open the door, we want to first check to make sure that if we're going to open it, that the door isn't already open. If it's already open, obviously we don't need to do anything. Okay, except maybe close it. So let's go ahead and that'll force it to do the opposite for us. So let's go ahead and make this an and. So we're going to see if it's moving, and so it has to meet both of these criteria. And coming out of here, if it's true, we're going to do another branch. And then we're going to do another check. After we make sure that this is the player, we're going to make sure that the door is moving, is not moving, and is not already open. And if either one of these are false, then, so in other words, if it's not moving and if it's not open, they will both be false. And then that's when we're going to go ahead and start the motion. So we're going to pull down from here, and we're going to get, we're going to pull the is door open down here, and we're going to set it. Because what we're going to do is if both of these are false, then we're going to go ahead and execute this. And this execution would be us opening the door. So we want to set that the door is open. Now for this one down here, once we leave the box, we want to make sure that the door is going to close, right? So in order to do that, we're not going to be able to use the and. We use the and because both of these need to be false. But in this case, what we're going to do is first we're going to check to make sure that the door is not already open. So if this is true, if the other object, other actor, and I put it in the wrong spot, this should be actor, not component. That's my bad. Okay, so it should be other actor. And if the other actor is the player, if that's true, we're going to get another branch. And we're going to do a check. Is the door moving? If the door is moving, we're not going to do this. It'll be false. And because the door is moving, right? So if the door is moving, we're not going to do anything. If it's false, we're going to close the door. So then we're going to do another check. Okay, well, if the door is not moving, is the door open? And if it's open, then we can close it. So we're going to go ahead and get is door open. So we're going to get we're going to do the is door open. And if the door is not moving, so if this is false, so this is why we couldn't do the same thing as we did above. We're going to do another branch. Hopefully I haven't confused you all. All right. So now what we're going to do is now, in order to close the door, it has to be open, right? So if the door is open, that would be true, right? And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to, actually I keep doing that. We're going to then set the door. We're going to set the door to not being open. So in other words, it's closed, right? Okay, now that I've probably thoroughly confused everybody what's happening, what we're actually doing is we're setting up the logic to put it into our timeline. So we're going to use a timeline to rotate the door, to open and close the door. And we can do that with one timeline for this without having to create two timelines for one that opens and then one that closes. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click here and type in timeline. And we're going to want to go all the way down here. We're going to want add timeline. And we're going to call this open, close. I'm going to do underscore, close, door. Okay. So this will be our open, close, door timeline. We're going to double click on it. And what we're going to do is we're going to hit the plus track right here. And we're going to add a float track. And this float track is going to be called door rotation. We're going to change the length to just 3 seconds. We don't need it to be 5 seconds. And when we do that, it's going to shrink down this down to 3 seconds. And because we're not set up to see it, you obviously don't see it yet because it only goes out to 2 seconds. But what we've done is we've changed the gray section here down to 3 seconds. Now, if you remember from last time when we did the cannons, we're just going to right click in here. We're going to add a key float. And we're going to change the key float to 0. So we're going to be at the 0 point. And we're going to be at the 0 value. So 0 on the timeline and 0 on the value line. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to right click. We're going to add another one. And we're going to click on it. Make sure it's highlighted. We're going to go all the way to the end. And we're going to rotate this door a negative 110. You can also do it in a positive direction if you wanted to. And I'm going to hit F on the keyboard. And we can see that we have this door line here. But again, it's linear. So if we did it this way, the door would just immediately open at a fast speed and close at a fast speed. And that's not the way things really work in the world, right? This would be a linear curve. It's all straight. What we want to do is we want to right click. I want to select user. We want it to kind of curve in and curve out. And we're going to make sure that this one's also user over here. We're going to compile. And we're going to save that. Now, if we jump back into our event graph, we'll see that we now have this door rotation float that we just added in here. We also have our update and finished here. And we also over here on this side have some inputs that were default. We have the play from start, stop, reverse. Reverse is what we're going to end up using. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back in. For the very top one, we're just going to hit play. Okay, and the reason why we're using play is if something would happen, we want this to play from where it's positioned at, not from the start. We don't want it to go close and then open and close again. We want it to play wherever it's at. So if it's open, we want it to play from open to close. And if it's a close, we want it to play from close to open. So we're going to connect that one there. And then this one is going to go into our reverse. So if this happens, if when we leave the box, we want the door to do the reverse of our timeline. So go from here to 0 to close. Okay? Pretty straightforward. All right, now this is where we're going to actually kind of make things work. Okay? Once we have determined which one we're doing, we're going to pull out of update, and we actually need to set that the door is moving, because remember we have this one down here and we're doing a check to see if the door is moving. Well, we actually have to set it somewhere, right? So we're going to click here, and I'm going to go ahead and set is door moving, and this output means that the door is moving. Okay, and then from here, because this is rotation, we're going to want to set our relative rotation of our door. Okay, and if we take a look at the viewport and we select the door, our rotation for this is the z-axis, the up and down axis, because this is what the door is going to rotate from. And these doors are already preset to rotate from the back side of the door. Okay, so it's going to rotate from this bottom corner down here. If you import a door, if you're not going to use these doors, you're going to import a model from somewhere else, make sure that you set it up so that the rotation point is down here in one corner or the other based on where you want the door to rotate from. So keep that in mind. If you want it to rotate from the middle, that's fine too, but just be aware that it's going to rotate from that center point. If this is where it's at down here or here in the middle, it's going to just rotate along the z-axis along that point. Okay, you can also set it up so that things rotate along the y or along the x-axis as well. So just double check yourself, and when we get ready to do the double door, I'll show you how to change this axis inside of Unreal Engine now so that we can actually change up where our rotation point is on our model. All right, let me go ahead and save what we've got so far. Let's go back to our event graph rather, and set this up. Okay, so we know that we need to change the rotation, and since it already has a rotation point, what we're going to do is we're going to set a relative rotation. Okay, and if I scroll down until I find set relative rotation, and then it gives us some choices. We actually want to change the relative rotation of the door. So we're going to pick the one that says the door. Okay, so this case mine is named SM door because that's what we drug in. And I'm going to drag this down a little bit. Connect this up here. But this isn't going to just work. We're going to have a little bit of a problem here because basically what's going to happen is nothing, because we have to tell it how much we want to rotate. And that's what this is about right here. But we can't just plug this into here. Okay, it's going to give us some choices, but we actually have to pick what we want. Okay, now we're going to actually set a rotator, and that's not what's coming up in here. So if we drag off from here, we're going to go ahead and do a make rotator, because what this is going to do is this is going to take the linear direction of our line here. So it's going to take this information and it's going to turn it into a rotational direction instead of a linear direction. So that's what this is going to do for us. And we don't want it to be on the X. Remember, we want it to be on the Z. So if you hold the control button and hover over that, get your little hand and then drag that into the Z. We want it to be on the Z axis. And we're going to drag that in and we're going to drop it right there. We're going to compile and save it. Okay, so this is not our actual door. This is the door we had in the scene. So let's go down a little bit further. Those are just the two separate models. And find our blueprint. Okay, I'm going to drag that in, and you see this one has everything all set together. And see how this is in the center point? That's because it center pointed it based off of the scene root, not off of the door. So don't freak out about that. We're not having problems yet, I hope. Now, if I hit play, what should happen is I should be able to roll up to it, and the door should open. And then when I leave, What did I forget? Ah, I see. So we set that the door is moving, and we've never undone it, right? So basically what we're doing here is we have a timeline. We set the door is moving, and then we've never told the part of the blueprint that the door is no longer moving. And remember, we're doing a check to make sure the door is not moving, and it's false. So we want to make sure that when we're done moving the door, that it is basically reset to its default position of false. So we're going to pull out from finished, and actually we can't do that. We're going to go ahead and grab is door moving. We're going to set is door moving, and we're going to plug into there. And now compile and save it. And we're going to go back in, and if I hit play, if I go up to the door, it should open all the way up. And then when I leave, hopefully it will close now. And it does. It automatically will close. And now if I come back up to it and it opens and then I back away from it, it'll finish opening, but it'll stay open because, again, we didn't give it time to finish. So because it wasn't finished yet, it continued its movement to open, and then it stopped because remember, door was opening when we left the... Let me walk through it here and I'll explain it. So when I moved away from it before the door was finished, it never did this piece of it. So the door stayed open, okay? And that's okay. That's a kind of a feature I wanted in this door. If this is not something you wanted, you may want to change it so that as soon as the player leaves this trigger, the door is set to not moving, but that kind of defeats the purpose of this. So, but this would give you the opportunity to leave doors open or closed if you open it and then moved away from it so that it would open all the way, and then if you pass back through it, it will then close. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. We didn't get as far as adding sound into this one, and that's because we're going to end up running over the 15 to 20 minutes. We're already over a little bit by about 5 minutes or so. So we're going to go ahead and stop here. In the next tutorial, we'll add the sound to the door, and then from there on out, we'll just add the additional complications to the door to make it so that the door has more sophistication in the way we're going to use it in our game. All right, so again, if you liked the tutorial, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks again, and thanks for playing, and I'll see you next time.